Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
You know, John, I listened to Ryan Seacrest yesterday in AT40, and you ever listen? Let me try that again. You ever listen to Ryan on AT40?
I don't know.
You don't? Well,
no. I'm also a heterosexual man, Brad. So I don't think I'm Ryan Seacrest demographic.
The BJ Singer's song "Yard Sign Sucks" is up to number 22 with the Bullet. I'm telling you.
No way! In homage of Jack Clark, the great number 22.
Right, it's climbing the charts. John, what a difference 72 hours makes, huh? Man.
I know, you mean with the weather, right? Like, we're under a heat advisory now, and on Friday, everything was fine. You know, kids were able to go play outside, and today it's super hot. You're right. 72 hours makes a huge difference, Brad. Hold on. I'm hearing loud noises.
Wonder what that could be.
I'm hearing loud noises, Brad. It's probably nothing, though, right? According to CNN, loud noises are nothing.
So here we go again. He's starting already. First off, kudos to some news people, to some radio stations. And once again, guilty as charged when I say this because of the fact that this morning, and I listen to a lot of different radio stations, and I'm not busting on Mark Cox or anything like that, but Mark Cox starts off the show by saying, "This is the first live program on this radio station since the shooting on Saturday night." I'm thinking to myself, that's not something to be proud of. That's something to be embarrassed by. And the reason I say that is because of the fact that I got a call, and this is one of these crazy things. You know, this is like mind memory. I'm old enough to know where I was when I found out that John F. Kennedy was shot, okay?
Wow, okay.
I'm old enough to know exactly where I was when Ronald Reagan got shot. Now I know I'm old enough. Matter of fact, it only happened, 48 hours ago, something like that. I was at a parking lot of Home Depot going in to buy some bolts, and a friend of mine called me up and said, "You're not going to believe what's going on. It looks like President Trump has been shot, and I don't know what's going on, and I think he may be okay, but he's bleeding." And I'm going, what? And immediately I started punching buttons on my radio. Nothing. I mean,
wow. And you went to radio rather than Twitter? No, I'm not being sarcastic, Brad.
Yeah,
the last place I would go would be, and I was in my car. We can get to that. I mean, I'm not going to turn on a radio station for news. I'm going to go to Twitter.
Well, that's where you and I are different. I mean, but see, here's...
And were you able to find, Brad? So tell me, you were able. Every radio station you went to had coverage of it, right?
No, zero.
Oh, so wait a minute. Twitter was better than radio.
Well, here's the problem. This is what drives me nuts about my own industry. Okay, we work very hard on Monday through Friday. On Saturday, it's all best of shows. Hey, it's the best of Sean Hannity. It's the best of, whatever. And it's all, it's Dr. So-and-so telling about his magic cure. And it's, you listen to talk radio. And it's it's the countdown show. It's the, American Country Countdown. It's American Top 40. There's nobody in the studios anymore. Now, once again, who did I go to first? And you're going to laugh when I tell you this. When I'm punching buttons, who did I go to first?
You went to St. Louis Public Radio.
You're right. And I heard some discussion of sexuality. And I'm going like,
ooh, nice.
I'm going like, well, what do you expect on 90.7, right? That's all you can expect. And what's interesting about it is, here's a perfect example. Okay. If I go on my phone this morning, I'm sitting right here in the studio. I'm going to do this live on the air, okay? And if I can get my passcode in. First off, I have this woman who's sending me a friend request, Annalie Helminen, and she's 22, and
she sounds real, Brad.
She's from Turku, Finland, and she's a knockout, and she wants to be my friend. Right, yeah, okay.
Right.
Okay, so if I go onto here, if I go to CNN.com, let's do what's CNN.com. Top story on CNN.com is RNC to kick off just days after Trump assassination attempt. Okay, that's CNN.com. If I go to FoxNews.com, it's Trump celebrates miracle survivor of assassination attempt, explains why he asked about his shoes, which is sort of interesting. And if I go to St. Louis Public Radio, take a guess, John. What do you think is going to pop up?
I think there's going to be something about Workfest, which was over the weekend. WERQ, which is for queer black people. That was a highlight on their website over the weekend.
Wrong, John.
What is it?
Vivid Tales of St. Louis Anchor, new novel by recent transplant the city.
Oh yeah, I saw that. And you know what? I almost read it, but it's a fiction thing, and I'm not a fiction guy. Yeah, it's some kind of a victimhood thing, right? Like a bunch of like imaginary stories. And isn't it called like Whiskey Tango, like Whiskey Tango from Missouri or something? It's got some kind of a name that puts down Missourians, make us seem like all Hoosiers.
James Allot's, Ayllotts, new novel, Tales of Whiskey Tango from Misery Towers.
Oh, yeah, stupid backwards Missouri.
It's based on the lives of the author's new neighbors after his family relocated from Hawaii to downtown St. Louis. Okay, story number 2. This is earth-shattering stuff. Story number 2. Guess what story number 2 is in St. Louis Public Radio?
Cori Bush pointing out that she doesn't use taxpayer money to hire security.
No, actually, Cori Bush is the number 3 story, but the number 2 story is, once again, this is earth-shattering news. This is St. Louis Public Radio, who has, how did we figure, when I did this on the air, we figured they have 28 reporters. 28 reporters,
yeah.
Which is more, I think, than Channel 4, Channel 5. It might be more than Channel 4 and Channel 5 combined, okay? The number 2 story is, Fort Leonard Wood is losing the band that has provided its soundtrack for 70 years. That's an important story. The Fort Leonard Wood.
It is. That's by Jonathan Ahl. He's a Raleigh guy.
Exactly. Okay. Number 3 story by our buddy Scott Rosenblum. No, actually, Jason Rosenbaum.
You said Scott Rosenblum. Now, was that intentional?
Yeah, it was intentional.
Okay, good. Okay, good. That's so funny. Okay. No wonder he finds you so off-putting, Brad. Go ahead.
Yeah, he doesn't like me anymore. Bush says her Gaza ceasefire push is resonating with Missouri's 1st District voters. And number 4, Howley calls for a congressional investigation of Trump assassination attempt security failures. We're getting into the assassination attempt. Number 5, Biden calls for unity following Trump assassination attempt. But once again, the number 1 story, you say this is fiction, Tales of Whiskey Tango from Misery Towers?
Yeah, they do a lot of, progressive book promos. So if you write a book about how terrible and old-fashioned the Midwest is. I don't know that book. I haven't read it. But, in the mornings I generally go through news sites like St. Louis Public Radio, and I saw that headline this morning on St. Louis Public Radio.
Well, they're right on top of they got their finger on the pulse of what people are looking for, right?
They do, yeah. And you know what? Our number 1 story today, I think we should probably save what everybody thinks is the number 1 story, maybe for B Block, Brad, because that kind of dominates everything. But you know what? Your call.
You want to hold off on the number 1 story?
It's not the number 1. I figured we would want to give more. It's 7:10, so I figured we would want to give more than 1 minute to the story. But we can call it in the ring, as they say in pro wrestling, Brad.
We start the show every morning with John giving his top 3. This is from johncombest.com, which he has dozens of stories up there that you can link to. But we do 3 of them with this guy.
I'm Casey Kasem.
And he starts it off by saying things like,
now on with the countdown.
And then we start with,
in 3rd place,
an expensive race that you have already highlighted, Brad, and here in A Block, which is Cori Bush versus Wesley Bell. And I think we should add Maria Chappelle-Nadal, who is also on the Democratic ballot in that primary. That's the number 3 story today, Brad. And I bring it up not just because, as you referenced, Jason Rosenbaum sat down in the studio with Cori Bush to talk about her reelection campaign, but also we've reached the time of year where campaigns will manufacture their own poll pretty much every week. And it's a fundraising gimmick that allows candidates to quote unquote prove that they're gaining ground in the polls, or that they have a lead, or that it's close, or whatever, and they can raise some more money. The Wesley Bell campaign has a poll out that shows Wesley Bell leading Cori Bush 56 to 33.
Really?
Which is a huge lead over an incumbent Democrat. Now, the fine print of this, Brad, is that this poll was conducted by an anti-Cori Bush group. And there's 300, according to them, 300 likely voters. The margin of error is plus or minus 5.7%. If you want a quick summary of some of the flaws of this poll, I would suggest you check out the Twitter feed /X feed of Maria Chappelle-Nadal. That's actually how I first saw this poll today. But the point is, Brad, we're in the time of year where if you're Wesley, you're pointing to this to help you raise money. If you're Cori, you even point to this and say, see, we are in trouble. AIPAC's dumping in a ton of resources to try to beat us. And if you're Maria, you're just pointing out that Cori is vulnerable, but that Wesley's not the guy to do it. Well, and then I would also point to the Cori Bush interview. I didn't listen to the whole thing that Jason did. Jason posted clips of it as he usually does on Instagram. So I watched Jason's clips, but he's got a full sit down interview with Cori. And I don't think it's the first time Jason has sat down with Cori, but I think it's the first time in a while he sat down with Cori. So for those of you who are into that kind of thing, it's probably interesting.
I heard part of the interview, I believe, when he was on the air on Friday, because we missed the fact that this past Friday was Jason Rosenbaum Friday.
It was. How did we miss that, Brad?
Yes, I don't know. We should be drawn and quartered for that. Okay, number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
A little bit of news in the governor's race. We'll focus more on the Democratic side rather than on the Republican side for once. Crystal Quade, who was presumed to be, and let's put an asterisk there, Brad, presumed to be the lead in the Democratic primary, was on Scott Fawn's show, This Week in Missouri Politics, the Sunday show, talked about her campaign, about what she's hearing from voters, the fact that voters are tired of Republican overreach, the fact that that voters are tired of Republicans meddling in personal decisions of Missourians. Another unique factor, though, Brad, of the Missouri governor's race is a Republican polling group, which is Remington, which is tied to a top GOP consultant, Jeff Rowe, did a poll for the Democratic primary for governor. And that poll, which was of 600 likely Democratic voters, showed businessman Mike Hamra leading Crystal Quade 23-21. So this surprised a lot of people. There was a lot of chatter on social media about this. Mike Hamra is a businessman from Springfield. You and I have talked about him, Brad. There's a lot of contention of the fact that he, in fact, voted in Illinois in recent years. But the fact that you're Crystal Quade and you've been the de facto leader of the Democratic Party for years now, and you're trailing some relatively anonymous business guy 23-21 would be pretty alarming, I think, if you're Crystal Quade.
Okay, here's the most important question, John. This is the most important question I'm going to ask you all morning long.
And the answer is no, but I want the listeners to hear it, Brad.
Did Scott Fawn discuss the billboard with Crystal Quade?
Well, asked and answered, Brad.
He did not.
Well, what I can say, Brad, is that, I never share conversations that I have off the air. I never share them on the air. I know that it was discussed, and I do know that in the final version, the version is, the show is edited. They have a Scott does a Q&A with the guest, and then they do a panel, and they have to tighten it up to make it less than 30 minutes. So yeah, in the final version, they don't chat about the billboard in the final version that went on the air. Man, that I'm heartbroken. I really am. I think there are more important issues than the fact that, a group supporting Crystal chose to spell her name wrong on a billboard. I did check my email Friday. I haven't checked. You know how I am about email, Brad. I don't have notifications turned on my phone for email. But I don't think anybody with Crystal's campaign or the third-party group that we saved with that billboard, I don't think anybody has reached out to say thank you, which is surprising. But, maybe there's an issue with their email or their internet or something,
And last but not least,
the number one.
But you said we're going
to... A little bit of resolution we talked about the delegate selection process. This brouhaha, this drama has finally come to an end, Brad. And the rule makers, I guess you could say the decision makers as part of the Republican National Committee, decided to reinstate the original slate of delegates to the Republican National Convention. And you'll recall this is the original slate that was chosen at the May 4th Republican State Convention. So a happy ending for those folks. Probably not so happy ending, maybe a little bit disappointing for folks who were on the quote unquote establishment side and thought they might get a chance to go to Milwaukee this year. So it ended well. And the one thing I would point people to listen to is I linked today, which you can find at johncombest.com, to Garrett Bowles' All the Above podcast down at KWTO. He did it on his live show on Saturday, and you can find the recording of it up today. He talked with Pat Thomas, the venerated leader of the Missouri Republican Party. She has been a stalwart. She has been the matron saint of the Republican Party, I would say, for decades now. And I think she has a really sober take on what happened with the truly Grassroots for Trump group, the group that's considered kind of, and then versus the group that's kind of considered the quote unquote establishment Missouri Republicans. And she talked a little bit about where the process went wrong, where there might have been miscommunication and misunderstanding, and where we go forward from here. So if you're looking for a view that's not bombastic and that's a really sober view of it, take a listen.
Okay, but dumb question. When was this finalized? Was this finalized?
It was finalized on Friday.
So some of those people were supposed to be in Milwaukee today, and some of them weren't then? So in other words, some people have to make last-minute travel plans? Or how did that work? Because
I don't know. I would assume if you were part of the truly Grassroots for Trump group, so that original slate of delegates, you probably had your travel plans ready. And you may or may not have canceled them. Like I personally am not gonna. I wouldn't drive to Milwaukee. I wouldn't be driving. I would be flying. But for some people, yeah, they probably had to make some last minute adjustments. And then if you were on the quote unquote Missouri Republican Party establishment, I guess you could call them if you wanted to be derisive. If you were part of that slate, you probably thought, oh shoot, I got to find a way to get to Milwaukee by Monday. And then you're relieved of that duty due to the RNC's decision on Friday.
Wasn't there a big hit song back in the 60s or 70s, Milwaukee by Monday? Wasn't that a huge song?
I don't know that, Brad. Was that really a song?
I think it was a Glenn Campbell song.
Oh, I like Glenn Campbell.
Yeah,
Rhinestone Cowboy.
Got to get to Milwaukee by Monday.
Now, as our friend Scott Fawn has pointed out, Milwaukee sucks. Now I've never been there, but I was a kid growing up in the 80s, and the 82 World Series is a little bit before my time.
Yeah.
But, Bruce Sutter striking out Gorman Thomas, that's where Milwaukee should stay. They should stay just as silver medalists. They should stay as whatever Mike Hamra or Crystal Quade will be at the end of the election. They're going to finish second place. Milwaukee, I think, is a second-rate, second-place city.
It's actually a very nice city. I've been there several times. Used to do business in Milwaukee, so you can say what you want about it. But it's actually a very nice city, at least from what I saw of it.
The only other thing I have to say about Milwaukee is Shemazel, Hassenpfeff Incorporated.
Well, Milwaukee's, and I don't think as much anymore because the Anheuser-Busch people are gone, but there was always that rivalry between St. Louis and Milwaukee because of beer. We had the beer barons here in St. Louis, the Busch family, and there were all the beer barons there in Milwaukee. And I don't even know if they have a brewery there anymore. Things have changed so much. We used to be the world headquarters for Anheuser-Busch, and now we're just like an outpost in flyover country. You know what I'm saying?
And we lost the world headquarters of 905 beer, which was one of my favorites. I'd love to go pick up a sixer at 905, head over to Spanish Lake Park, guzzle it, take the Spanish Pond Road home so you don't get pulled over. You know what I'm talking about, Brad.
Well, we used to go behind Ronnie's barbershop. That's where we'd guzzle our beer. Okay. We have to take a break.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?